sun, you feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive.
Welcome to the Bassline. Dawn Solomon is a vaccine-injured individual who has taken the term "do your own research" to the next level. In an effort to figure out what was going on with her body, Dawn invested in a microscope. Her findings were astonishing and possibly groundbreaking. It is with utter fascination that I welcome to the Bassline the Dragon Slayer, Dawn Solomon. Welcome to the Bassline, Dawn. How are you this evening?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate you very, 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 very much.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you're here. And this is an interesting program, guys. This is, I mean, we'll hear all about it in a moment. But Dawn, I know through Twitter Spaces. She's well known in the medical freedom slash vaccine injured community. We've met virtually on many spaces, and her whole story and what she's come across is just completely fascinating. So this is sort of like inside baseball, if that's the right term. Like this is the inside scoop kind of an episode because I think you're going to be hearing more about Dawn and her findings for those of you who stay alert, keep your ear to the ground, but you will not have come across what we're about to discuss in the mainstream at all. It's something we're definitely about to discuss things that you haven't heard of before. So definitely stay tuned. I want to mention before we jump into our discussion, like I said, please follow me on Twitter at EarthDriver. I failed to mention that as I was saying, hey, follow me on Twitter. I didn't mention, well, you wouldn't find me necessarily. Actually, I do have a backup now, Jeremiah Hosea. So yeah, follow that too. That's cool. But my main account is at EarthDriver. And as I've said many times, I hate to even promote a corporation for free. And I understand the evils of social media. We could have a whole lengthy discussion about that. My criticism of social media is pretty extensive, but there are practical connections being made on Twitter in regard to the medical freedom movement. I've met incredible guests there. I've met incredible freedom fighters that I'm really glad that I've met. So, I think of it sort of like using a car. You could get in a car and drive from point A to point B and save a lot of time as opposed to walking, or you could get in a car and just drive recklessly and even do great harm. But it doesn't have to be that way. So perhaps there is responsible social media usage. And also, please check out my latest Substack. The article that I just released is called Radio Silence. I referenced it before it was published in my previous interview with Dr. Roger Hodkinson. And I'm pretty excited about the article. It's gotten some great feedback, and I think I cover some bases that are not being discussed, or at least not being discussed enough. So please check out that article. I think it's a pretty good one. Substack is like a new lifeline for me, and I am very committed to that, by the way, for those who have kindly subscribed to my Substack, and especially those who are paid subscribers. I will not let you down. Like by virtue of the support that I've received, I'm going to continue to write. I feel obligated to write at least one article a month as a father and working musician and chess teacher and everything. I can't currently produce as many articles as I would like, but at least one a month and sometimes more. That's been my rate so far. I think that actually I'm certain to have published my 18th article in my last release, and that's in 13 months. So that's the rate at which I'm writing. And every article is a new work of art, so to speak. Everything is contrived, or I don't want to use the word contrived. It's a negative word. Everything is devised, everything is realized, imagined, um, organically. Every article had its own process. So, like I said, I really appreciate the support there. But without further ado, we have an incredible discussion on hand here. But before we get into all this other incredible stuff we need to discuss, I would like to hear from you, Dawn, in terms of your own vaccine injury. I know you're a vaccine injured individual and you haven't been outspoken about that aspect. You contribute to the community, you're doing this intensive research, you're using your microscope and coming up with all these findings that, we're going to discuss, but you haven't discussed your own situation that much. So if you could, to whatever extent you feel comfortable, could you please just tell us your experience in terms of your vaccine injury and the circumstances surrounding that?
Sure. So I worked for RTD, which is a public transportation bus system down here in Denver, Colorado. We would, I drove a city bus, okay? Um, and in order to drive that city bus, they were mandating that we were vaccinated. Okay, so we had to get vaccinated. Um, I really didn't trust the vaccines, but because my gut was telling me don't do it, don't do it. But you know that you need your job. So I went ahead and I got the first shot. I got a little sick, but I really wasn't that sick. So I was like, okay, I could go ahead and go do the second shot because the first shot wasn't that bad, right? Second shot, I was sick immediately. I mean, I was like very, very sick. I left there and I couldn't even like hardly make it home. I get home, I was like could not get off the toilet like for days, for months. Okay. I'm seriously, when I say excessive. It was so excessive, and no doctor, no hospital, no anybody could stop it. All right. It was just constant. If I ate something, it wouldn't even like get processed through me and it would just come straight out. And so they could not stop it. They kept treating me for dehydration, but they couldn't stop the bowels from overreacting. They said that I was having a allergic reaction to the shot and that it would take its course. Okay, well, it took its course for 3 months. I could not leave my house for like 3 months because you would have accidents no matter what if you tried to like leave the house. So, I was homebound for 3 months. And then it started to like stop. It just stopped all of a sudden after the 3 months. I did register with Pfizer and document that container maybe being contaminated or whatever. They were asking a bunch of questions, and that was all that was ever done about it. I went back to work. Then one day I got sick again. Couldn't get out of bed. I woke up, my back was like completely to where I could not walk. Okay, I had to like pull myself to the edge of the bed and try to like put my feet over the bed, and I could not walk. Um, I started going to see some doctors and they were going to do some surgery on me and said that I had spinal fluid leaking out of my back. Right. So I was like, oh, great, here we go. So I had not tied the COVID yet to my back problems or anything else. Okay. And I still didn't tie it yet, even when they said that I was going through the process of getting the surgery and I wind up being diagnosed with vulvar cancer. All right. And so I went to the doctor down here. They were like, we're going to do a vulvectomy. And when I saw what a vulvectomy was, I Googled it online and I was like, oh no, they're not. Like that's like cutting out all your whole insides, sticking a tube in you, sewing you back up. And they had like cut down the legs because they were gonna take like the lymph nodes and stuff out. And so I was like, they are not doing that to me, especially when they didn't even do a biopsy yet. So I went to Cleveland, Ohio, to the cancer clinic out there and got a second opinion. And he was like, I could do a simple vulvectomy, which that's still pretty, and I won't describe it since there could be children watching this process. Okay, so I was like, all right, I'll go ahead and do it because I wanted to live, right? And they diagnosed me with having a kind of cancer that a precancer that has it won't ever go away. It stays in me, but it could turn into invasive within 3 months. All right, so every 3 months I have to go in and make sure that it's not gone active. If it does, and it's not HPV or nothing like that, they ran all those tests and that was negative. So it wasn't caused by any, other virus. It's just something that's in me. So they went ahead and I went under surgery and they were able to remove the precancer that was in the vulvar area. And I was able to keep all my body parts. I woke up and I was like, okay, this is good, right? Um, but I still came home and it was like hard to lift my arms. They were really sore. It's hard to hold my cell phone. Like it hurt to even like text message anybody. All right. I was that sick. And I said, they're missing something. All right. And on my biopsy, when I got that back, because he did do a biopsy in Cleveland, it said that I had a um, diffused, another atypical cell diffused from another location. So when I'm like Googling that, it's stating that I had another piece of cancer coming from another piece of my body somewhere else, is what I read. Okay. So I was like, my mom had blood cancer. So she was diagnosed with that like a year after, before COVID. And so I was wondering if I had her rare blood cancer, right? Because it took them like 20 years to diagnose her and find it. Um, so I went ahead and I was like, I'm gonna go get a microscope and I'm just gonna start looking at my blood and see if I had somebody go buy some fenbendazole, and I wanted to see if Joe Tippett's cure would actually like work, because he said that he cured all these different cancers with fenbendazole. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna put it in my blood and see what it does and see if it would like make my blood better. Now, when I bought the microscope, I had no idea how to work one. I do have an associate of science degree. You know, I did the hardest classes of college, and I did graduate with, you know, good grades and top of my class and stuff, and even made student of the month. But I didn't know how to work the microscope. Okay, so I'm Googling it, how to even like operate it. Like I didn't even know I bought one that was a black field, you know, or dark field microscope. I had no idea that. I had no idea that you could put oil on it and all that stuff. So I learned a lot about the microscope, and then I had to learn how to read my blood now. Because here I have this blood in there and it's all moving and it was really cool and I was fascinated by it, but I still didn't know what was what in the blood. So I watched many, many, many YouTube videos of what was in the blood, how it's supposed to look, all that other stuff. Well, when I was reading one of the videos, it said that yellow in the blood is a parasite. Okay. So that always stuck in my head because I'm seeing yellow in the microscope too. So I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that's a parasite in my blood. So when I emailed my doctor, because I had found this worm that went total viral on YouTube, or on actually on Facebook. And it was the first worm that I found in my body. And it was had little like legs at each end, and it had a head at each end, and then it had a big round circle in the middle of it, like a wire. And it went viral. It had like 680,000 views. And then after that, I sent it to my doctor, and she's like, I don't know what that is. I said, well, whatever that is what's killing me. So can you please give me a doctor that knows what it is? And she's like, sure. So she sent me to a blood doctor and a cancer doctor that was a specialist, and he didn't even want to see it. Like he didn't want to look at my videos, nothing like that. So, but he did send me off for every parasite test that was like under the sun. Okay. And they kept coming back negative. Everything kept coming back that I was perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with me. So I kind of thought that maybe I was like losing my mind. Well, I kept looking in the microscope, and when I put the fenbendazole on there, all the blood, it started making all these like little critters like run off to the side. The yellow that was around the red blood would fall off. All right. And then it would get like taken to the side. And so then I would have all my red blood cells there and all this yellow like moving away. And I'm like, how is that moving? So I took my sister's blood, my mom's cancer was doing the same thing. So it made me question if she even really had blood cancer. And here they are giving her chemo every day. Um, and so I took grandkids, I took everybody in the families, and we were all in different houses. And so all of our blood was the same. All right. Every time that I look at our blood, it would have the yellow rings. And then I would look online and I see COVID having the yellow rings. Okay. I see schistomosis having the yellow rings. So there was a lot of different things that had yellow rings around it, around the red blood cells. So of course I didn't know what it was yet. I went ahead and went to the hospital after because I figured, no, let me back up. Let me back way up. I started testing the water. All right. Because I knew something was in, like we all had something in common. I know it wasn't like we don't eat all the same foods, we don't like do all the same things, but we all shower and we all use the same kind of water, more or less in Colorado. So we went and I tested the water. First, I go and buy a COVID kit. This is how naive I was. I buy a COVID kit, put the water in there to see if it was positive, you know, if it's going to come back positive for COVID, and it came back negative. So I was like, oh, nope, it ain't in the water. I excluded the water from it being a possible source. My sister's in the shower. She gets out. She go, put the water in the microscope and put the fenbendazole on it. And I was like, okay. And so I did it. And when I did, I seen all the yellow like pop up. So I was like, oh my God, they're transparent. I was like, they needed a host, right? And so needless to say, I still had a lot of learning to do. We went ahead and saw that they were in the water. I go and I'm like, okay, now I'm not getting in that water because I was scared to death of the water. I wanted to go to the store, like start finding any kind of water that was safe that didn't have them in the water. I bought every water under the sun. I bought distilled, I bought you know, all of the waters, and I even posted on my page some of the waters that I tested and which ones came back bad or whatever. And so I went ahead and got distilled water, and I'm like, I'll distill it myself and see if I could get it out, right? Go buy a whole distilled setup, distill the water, boom, nope, it's still in the water. I was like, how could they get through the distilled that's distilled? And I was like, well, Dawn, it's a no-brainer. If it's already been distilled and they were in there, what made you think that your distilling process would make it any better, right? I was like, that was like a, yeah, not a very good move. So that was money wasted. I even took a car battery and hooked up jumping cables to it and cut the copper part off, and had copper exposed and put it in the water to shock it. I was like, I'll shock him out of the water, right? That didn't work neither. Anyway, so I kept like trying to find a way. I finally did find reverse osmosis to be a good water, and natural
Mm.
spring water was some good water. So that was a good thing to find some safe water. After that, I still was like very sick. My blood was really, really, really black. It was like dirty, dirty, dirty blood. I had a lot of different like critters in my blood. I had so I was like, I'm just gonna start trying to get evidence that there's something in my blood because everybody's telling me I don't have anything in there. So I started dropping my blood in water for like a week. Just take a little prick on my finger and then put the blood in the water. And I had like 3 different glasses, and I kept doing that for like a week. Well, the little things started growing in the water, and it was like has these little legs, and it's like got a head at each end, and there was 3 of them, right? And each glass produced one. So I was like, oh my God, I just grew my own chia pets. And I was like, this is crazy. So I was like, okay, now I have evidence. I wanted to take it to the hospital and get seen and get treated, right? Because I want these out of my body. I could feel them like crawling underneath my skin or moving. All right. When it felt like they bite, their head would like rear up, and it would be like you could see them poke through the vein, like move the vein up. And it was pretty brutal because it was very painful. So I was like, this is like out of control. And I had lots of them at the time that was happening. So I took the jar up to the hospital, and before I went there, I had added them all together. And one starts eating the other one. The baby one starts getting eaten by the other one, and the other one's like just propped up, sitting there watching it as it's eating it, and it's getting ready to. So after he was done eating that one, the other one ate him. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're eating each other, which that kind of freaked me out. So then I go to the hospital. The guy puts me on a mental hold, said I was crazy, but he didn't tell me that he was putting me on a mental hold. He just puts me in a room. They took my clothes. I had my cell phone still, and I'm sitting there for like 6 hours. There's nobody coming in to see me. And I'm thinking, okay, if I have a parasite that's eating me alive, I think they would be a little bit more like prompt to come in the room and see me, right? Nope. I'm just sitting there. And I'm like, hey, can I get my clothes? The guy's like, you can't leave. You're on a mental hold. I'm like, oh no, I'm not. So I went ahead and called my sister. She came down. The doctor was like really sarcastic, rude, was like laughing at me. There's nothing under your skin biting you. Look at you. You're in a psychosis state. And he leaves the room. And when my sister got there, we called the doctor back down, and a lady doctor came down, and she was the new doctor for the ER on duty right now. And she looked at the bottle and looked at my pictures, and she released me. So I was like on the psych hold for like 6 hours. Right. But in my notes, he put some pretty damaging stuff in there that stopped me from getting any medical treatment later on. Everybody just deemed me as crazy, and that there was nothing wrong with me, more or less. So with that being said, I wasn't getting any treatment anywhere else. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm in trouble because I have these things still in me, and it wasn't getting any better. So I went to a blood analysis lady the very next day to make sure that I was seeing what I was seeing in my blood, because I'm just a rookie, right? I'm just out there doing this on my own free will. So I wanted to validate what I was seeing. When I went in there to her, and then plus all my family was, questioning me too, like what's going on. So when I went in to see the blood analysis, she confirmed that there was like 17 worms and 1 drop of blood. So when they just test you like a diabetes test. And so it's a small hole that comes out, so only that size of a critter is going to actually be able to penetrate through the blood or through your skin. So she tested my blood. There was like 17 worms in there. And she was like, you're very, very infested. She said, actually, she diagnosed me as severely infested with parasites. That's what she even named them as. Bacterial, fungi, metals, everything was in my blood. So she gave me a bunch of herbs to take for like 2 months, and they didn't work. So they were like starting to clean out some of them, but not compared to what the medicines that I found that actually helped me. It wasn't until then that I started getting relief, but I
Mhm.
had mixed like 10 pills together, and it like eliminated them all out of my blood. So at one time I had them all out of my blood and was good. Um,
Um,
right, right. So, but it was like 10 medications. 4 of them were antibiotics. And so it was a lot of meds to take. Like, I'm surprised I didn't like get in trouble just taking that many meds at once. So I was good for like 3 days. I kept checking my blood, and it was perfect. I stood outside and I was power washing my deck, and I was in the water, and my pants are all the way wet up to my knees, and I'm just washing and washing. And I didn't realize yet that this is the way that I was probably getting sick. And so then when I came back in from watering, I was like, oh, I'm going to check my blood. And it was like 3 hours later, and I tested my blood, and they were all back in my blood. All the yellow circles were back around all the red blood cells. So I was like, oh, great. Now I'm sick again. You know, I got them all back in there. So I was thinking maybe the pills didn't work, or maybe it was I was standing out in the water, whatever. I still didn't know yet. But so anyways, I started noticing that there was a patent that I found that was related to silkworm. Because I started looking, like we all thought it was schistosomosis at one time. We thought it was algae at one time. I was contacting my water department. They were looking online. He looked for 4 hours and said that he couldn't find anything close to what I had, and that he would pray for me. All right. And I'm like, okay, that's not the answer I wanted to hear. So anyways, the lady that did give me my blood analysis, she contacted the Colorado Health Department and actually opened up a case for me for having contaminated water. Right. So that was one thing that was good out of that blood analysis that I got, because a doctor has to open that case. You can't call in and open it up yourself. So they did open a case for contaminated water. And the whole time, like, we've been trying to figure out what it is. Like, the health department said as soon as we found out what it was, then they would act on it. So getting a doctor out here to diagnose silkworms and anything else like that has not been any road that I've been able to accomplish. Okay. When I Googled on the doctor's database who treats silkworms, there's not one doctor in the US that I know of that's qualified or educated to do it, or even in the database to do silkworms. So I'm like, okay, that's a red flag. If none of them know about it or are educated to treat it, then none of them are diagnosing it, right? Because they don't know about it. Or maybe they do know about it and I don't know. But there's none licensed out there that was treating it. So when she told me to go get treated, I was a smart, and I said, oh yeah, I was being a smart aleck, and I said, well, you go in and get treated because they're in you too, and they locked me up in a mental ward last time, but since you belong to the state and stuff like that, they'll treat you. So you go in there and you tell them you got it because they're in everybody's blood that's in here in Colorado. And she wasn't falling for that. So anyways, the health department tells me go ahead and go into a doctor, get treated. And so I know that there wasn't one here in Colorado. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? So I'm like, I'm just going to treat it myself. So I started taking medicines and putting it in. I wanted to mix the 10 that I mixed the first time, but I couldn't get those 10. All right. So I finally did, I thought, and some of them was like a zinc pill and magnesium, which are over the counter pills. And so I had ran out of those. I go grab a bottle off the counter, I mixed them together, and I put them in the blood, and it didn't work. And I'm like, why isn't it working? And when I looked in the bottle, there was like this worm at the bottom of the bottle that I mixed together. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. That wasn't in the pills. Like, so I'm thinking, how did that get in the bottom there? If I mix those pills together, how's a worm in there? All right. Well, then I go back and I start taking the pills individually and dropping them in water. And one was exactly that same thing. So, and it was a contamination on the supplement off the shelf. I call the FBI, report it, they don't even come get the bottle. They didn't really care. And I noticed that they're not administered by like the food health department. Nobody watches over supplements, and I didn't know that. All right. So then I'm thinking, oh, great. And that was magnesium. So I couldn't find magnesium anywhere to make my medicine. So I'm like, I'm just going to go buy some other supplements and stuff. And that's how I was able to stumble across what I did for the cure. Okay. For my cure. By mixing certain different other things together. So in the meantime of doing that, I was able to actually clear my blood and then also get the ones out of the tissue, but I could not have done that on my own. And the people don't really want me to mention their names now. I don't know why, but they don't. But I was on X, and we were in a research database thing where a bunch of us were together just sharing our research. And when I did that, a lady mentioned something, and I went ahead and tried that, and that was like the thing that took him out of my tissue. So it was like a solid. And ever since then, I've just been going down this road of trying to put things together and make it all work. When I found out that it was silkworm, I found this patent that stated that it was done in 2019, and it was a World Treaty Act that was signed. And when I started reading it, I noticed that they were putting these in humans, okay, and that they were putting them in like our animals, our food. A bunch of stuff was in this patent that was pretty like alarming. And then I noticed that they also use silkworm to edit mRNA, and then also administer any virus, sickness, so like autoimmune disorder, proteins. They could go in and edit your genes, cut genes out, put genes in. So I was like, okay, what's this patent about? So I went ahead and I actually was able to decode the patent, which is kind of really weird. but I was able to get like an itemized list, okay, of everything that they used on that patent. When I started Googling each one individually, I started noticing that there was a really big correspondence with what was going on with COVID. All right. So then I noticed that there was a Moderna shot that was connected to the patent, which I thought that's kind of crazy that Moderna would be attached to a silkworm patent when it's actually a COVID shot, right? So I was like, that has to play a part. So I went ahead and started looking at it, and I started noticing that the images that I have in my blood were the same images that the funeral directors were having, that they were pulling out these fiber clots out of people. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, mine is alive. And if they're telling people they're not alive and I could feel them moving, I was like, that's the red flag. Like we need to tell people that they're alive. And I had to confirm that that was what it was, that those two actually played a hand in hand, that they were the same thing. So I did some research on the two funeral directors that I found, and I was going through one of their pages and I found one of their jars that had a bunch of the fiber clots in them. And when I zoomed in, I seen one of the heads on the fiber clots that had a face, and it was the same kind of heads that I was seeing in my blood. And so I circled it and I wrote head on it and I sent it back to him. And I'm like, you have one in your jar right there and it's alive. Like you have the whole body of it. And so he really didn't want to, he said to me, like, I don't think that's the same thing that's in your blood. So that was his response, which that's cool. You know, a lot of people don't understand the silkworm or whatever. What they actually do though with the silkworm is they take a fiber from the cocoon, they boil the cocoon down and they get like a mile's worth of silk. And they take that actual fiber from that and put it in a petri dish, and they put whatever they need to put in there to alter, to edit, to put any virus in us. They'll put that in that petri dish and they keep like degumming it and stuff. And then they could administer it into any of us. It could go ahead and like penetrate through your skin through water. And so that's one way that they said it gets into your body is through bathing. So that kind of like let me know that it was in my water, because if it's in me and it's in my water and it's in my blood, then I'm pretty sure it came from me bathing. But also from drinking it too, I'm sure too. So anyways, I went ahead and started looking into silkworm really, really deep. Like I was like, everybody thought I was crazy because I was telling people that they were alive, and I didn't understand yet that it was the silk fiber from the cocoon, that it wasn't the silkworm, because they didn't take the silkworm fiber or nothing, they took it from the cocoon. But I was seeing them alive, so I'm like, how are they alive in our body when it's supposed to be just a fiber, right? I did notice that they use the polyester protein in the silk fiber, or in the silk protein, or the silk, yeah, the silkworm patent. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, that might be what's growing in our body. That's like what they're talking about, the plastics and stuff. But these still had heads on them. So I'm like, how is this possible that I'm feeling something alive? When I noticed one of the sequences, they used AAVHU, which is they transported it into a human, 54. It was something that would actually minister them to actually come alive inside of you and be into your blood. So
Yeah.
that was how I knew that they were like alive in us.
Yeah, that's incredible, everything that you're saying, and you kind of almost jumped ahead in the conversation a little
Did I?
bit,
I'm
which I don't
sorry.
mind. It's okay, I don't mind. Um, but I would like to ask you a little bit in terms of, so I know you said you had an associate's degree in science. What branch of science is that? Like, if you could mention that. And I know you said you didn't have experience with microscopy. So a question that naturally comes to mind as you're describing all this detailed stuff that you see in your microscope is, I would think as someone who hasn't looked in a microscope since elementary school, and probably a microscope that's not nearly as powerful from the images that I'm seeing that you've shown me, of, not nearly as powerful a microscope as what you're dealing with. My question naturally would be, well, if I look into a microscope, aren't I just going to see a bunch of just stuff? So how, like, I guess, how do you feel, like, if you could describe your sort of progress in microscopy? And I know you said you watched a lot of YouTube videos and stuff, and there's so much great information out there nowadays in terms of being able to sort of study or learn just about anything.
Right.
But what has been your personal progress and experience in terms of, one, getting your bearings with the microscope and the art of microscopy, the art and science of microscopy. And have you had an opportunity at all to show and have a discussion about your findings with somebody, a biologist or someone who would be, well acquainted with the microscopy aspect of everything?
No, what I did was, okay, so in a dark field, what I learned was that anything that was like glowing the bright orange or yellow or anything like that, any color is an organism, okay? So it wouldn't glow. So if there's air bubbles, they won't glow bright orange or bright yellow, okay? They would be just, they wouldn't even be they wouldn't even show up in a dark field. Now, in a regular field, when I turn the dark field off, it would be black. The air bubbles would show black circles. And that's where I thought maybe the doctors were misled, because when I first started doing blood, this was how naive I was. I was like, oh, look at all the air bubbles in the blood. Okay. As we're, looking down the blood slide. I mean, so I was like, those weren't air bubbles when I went to the dark field. They were some were air bubbles and they wouldn't glow orange or yellow. But what confirmed it was, all right, so they're wrapped around the blood cells. When it's blood, it's bright red, pink, blood cells that are floating along. Like our blood will move in a live blood smear. When you dip the blood into a dye, you won't see the silkworm. So a lot of hospitals, when they were doing the CBCs, they would dip it in the dye, and then they would look underneath the microscope at it. None of them were doing live blood, that I know of. Okay, they didn't do none of mine live blood, otherwise they would have found this, I think. So what happens is when they stick it in that machine, it was reading your white blood count, your red blood count, and your platelets. It wasn't showing. What I was seeing was all my white blood cells were trapped, all right, and all my red ones are floating around. And then even if they had a red one inside the white one, there was a black ring around it. So they were being excluded from any of the other blood that was floating down the microscope. So it was pretty obvious that I had no white blood cells interacting with my red. They were completely separated from my red, which I see that as a big red flag. Okay. If my white blood cells aren't interacting with my red, then that leaves me open to get any virus, any cancer, any autoimmune disorders. And of course, I was becoming anemic. My thyroid started acting up. So these are all things that were happening, as we're going along. So with that being said, I started looking at whatever parasites were there. That's when I had even misdiagnosed when I got schistosomosis. I seen a worm of schistosomosis in my blood, not realizing yet that they use schistosomosis in the patent. Okay. So of course I would have seen schistosomosis. So at one time I really believed that it was schistosomosis in my blood. And it wasn't. So, but schistosomosis also would go around just like the COVID and have the yellow ring around the blood. So I was almost convinced it was schistosomosis in our water and in my blood. It wasn't till later on when I started seeing, because they use silkworm, spider silk. Okay, spider silk they've even put into a lot of I don't want to say, I think guess cows, but more what's the other ones that they have out there? Not cows, but sheep. Okay, and they were, because spider silk, they can't make a farm of spiders because the spiders would kill each other. So they couldn't do like massive quantity of spider silk. And spider silk is used for like bulletproof vests, stuff like that. Okay, it's very durable. And so they also have dragon silk, which I didn't know existed. They actually have little heads like look like a dragon on the worm. Okay. And so I was like, oh my goodness. When I started seeing the blood, and I have a lot of videos where you can actually see the face of a dragon. And I'm like, that's a dragon in my blood. Like, how is that dragon in my blood? So when I'm seeing these things, you don't have dragons in your blood. You don't have little pigs floating around in your blood. You don't have mouses that are in your blood. Like, and they're actual, like, full laid out creatures, like, the actual animal itself floating in the blood. And to me, that was like really weird. I'm like, how is that even possible? How are we alive if we have a pig floating in our blood, right? That's just like not heard of. So those things weren't out there on the YouTube or anything like that that's in your blood. Those are not normal things that show up in the blood. You see white blood cells, you see red, you see the plaque, your platelets, and they go down the little, slide. And if there's any parasites or anything like that, they run off to the edges out of the blood. Okay, so you could go out into the field there and look and see if there's any there. I would see them. There's a lot of circles out there. And then when I found the sheet that shows them degummed, it shows them traveling as the circles that were in my blood. And then that's when I was able to piece it together. That's what's in my blood. And that's what's separating my blood and drawing circles around the white blood cells, because it was the same images of the degummed silkworm that was on the internet. Okay, so that's how I kind of pieced that together too. I didn't correlate with any biologist or anything like that. I didn't tell anybody. The only person that I came close to comparing anything to was my blood analysis lady. And I showed her my images and stuff like that. And she was able to like validate that that is a parasite in my blood. That is, this is a bacteria, this is a metal. And so that was how I was able to compare things. And that was the only, not, the schooling I got really besides the internet. And then whatever I found on my own. Like I really didn't have a whole lot of guidance. So when I first got onto X, I was always doubting myself, my own findings. You know what I'm saying? I was like, is this really what I found? And I didn't have any of that validation really until I actually had the silk moth grow in one of my jars, and the cocoon and the moth hatched. And then I knew right then and there, that is the silkworm. Like that moth is only grown or made in China's labs, right? They don't grow in the wild. They don't produce out in the wild. So there's no reason why I should have one in my house in a jar that hatched out of my water and the medicine, mixed together. And the only thing I used in that jar was medicine and the tap water. So there was no reason why I should have a cocoon and a moth. And it's a Bombay Morix or moth, whatever that one is. It's got like the long eyelashes. It's white, and its eyelashes were like stuck to the lid because the jar was so small that it grew in that it didn't even have enough room. So when I opened up the lid, I thought it was like mold in there at first. And I go to pop it out, and it's actually the whole cocoon. And I still have it. Like I have the whole cocoon, the whole moth, and it's just all in one. And so that kind of really validated my findings too. So it wasn't that what I was seeing in my blood was just what I'm seeing in my blood. I was finding them too, and like bowel movements and stuff like that. I would rinse it down and find what parasite was in my blood was in my bowel. So I had the evidence of them too. And I was able to like put medicines on them and find out which ones were dissolving them, because everybody kept saying they couldn't dissolve the fiber clots. So I wouldn't stop until I found something that did, that would like completely dissolve it, make it go away. And I was finding like that they had like skeleton skulls and like a spine, and I was like, oh my God, these are alive in us. So when I saw that, it just kept validating it. I just kept getting more and more things that started adding up. What took me so long to figure it out though is that I was getting so many different variety of things. I was getting, a pig, a mouse, a snake, dragon, and stuff like that. So I was like, how am I getting all these different animals coming out? And there's like, what's causing this? And when I saw that the spider silk and the dragon silk and the silkworm could administer those things into you and change your DNA and stuff like that, and change chromosomes, or not change them, but go in and edit and alter. All right. And they can actually stop genes from producing and knock them out. I don't know how they do that. All right. The genes things, I don't really know a whole lot. I just started like putting all that together when I started pulling up certain things that was on the ingredients. It's saying human chromosome 6 and mouse chromosome 17. All right. And those are compatible with each other. All right. So I'm thinking, but they're in different spaces on each, one's got a different space on a human and one's got a different space on the mouse, but so I'm thinking, did they switch those numbers? What did they do to us that is making me produce a mouse out of, my blood and out of my bowels? I'm like, how is that possible? So I was assuming that they just might have altered some of our chromosomes that's compatible with the mouse, just like they did with the pigs when they were starting to make human pigs to grow, body parts for us whenever we got sick and needed a heart or anything like that. And they were coming out with human faces and stuff like that. So I was like, did they cross that line and start using them in us, or somebody make a bioweapon to start attacking us? I don't know. But what I'm seeing and what it's coming out is pretty clear that something's not right. And you don't produce mouse and pigs in your blood. Like that's just not something that's heard of. Sounds crazy, but it's like I have the pictures of them. Like there are really mouses and pigs, and these are, and also people that aren't vaccinated and aren't, COVID, that weren't COVID diagnosed or anything like that. I'm sure we've all been exposed, and some might have gotten it and not been tested, but it's in every single one of my family members and everybody's blood that I was testing. So I'm like, this is not something that all of us should be having in our blood. So that to
Yeah,
me was a red
just
flag.
for the listeners to get an idea a little bit. I mean, first of all, unfortunately, in this case, it's unfortunate that this isn't a video program. It's a radio show, basically. So
Right.
we have to describe these things. But I'll say, as somebody who hasn't comprehensively looked through the dossier of all these images, I've seen a bunch of them, and there's a lot of weird things, folks. I mean, I would love for there to be a big COVID microscopy conference. I've been saying that for a while, but a lot
Right.
of people have claimed to have seen various things under various microscopes. And, I would love to get a bunch of folks together, a bunch of microscopes, hopefully some state of the art microscopes, for such a convention, and as many samples from around the world as possible, because that's another thing, is because something appears in one vial or in
Right.
one sample doesn't mean it's going to reproduce itself on the other side of the world. Maybe they
Right.
received a different product on the other side of the world.
And you're
We don't
right
know.
about that. You're so right, because there's some I started getting online to try to see if I could pair some of my sightings to anybody else that was finding them. And I noticed with a lot of blood analysis, people that they were reporting that they were having these weird ob- objects showing up in people's blood. Okay. One lady said she had a spider, show up in somebody's blood. And so when I saw that and I saw hers were bright yellow too, and all these things, I'm like, oh, this is all starting to make sense, because she's seen a spider as in I was seeing a dragon, so was her patient have the spider silk protein in it and mine have the dragon, or, so I was wondering about that too. Like each one might have a different outcome of what's being produced in your body.
Yeah, I
So
mean, that can
that's
also
very good.
cause like a little bit of infighting in a way where I know some people have tried to rebuke other people or rebut them and say that, that's not in the vials. I looked in the thing under the microscope, but it's like maybe you saw something different. We shouldn't just dismiss our colleagues offhand or whatever. That's why I hope
Right.
that there is a bigger conference where a
That
lot
would
of
be
this
really
stuff
cool.
can just get hashed out, and maybe even some misunderstandings will be clarified or what have you. But also
Well, you should facilitate that for us. Get a whole bunch of microscopes and people and do a live show and like start showing people's blood and showing people what's in their blood and like
maybe we
evaluate
could
it for
get
people,
Steve Kirsch to
right?
sponsor that or something. but but it also, like, let's make a little distinction here for the listening audience, since we don't have the benefit of video or a slideshow in this case. So you've seen, and I've seen some of these images of these, bizarre organisms or just like creatures in your blood. Like, what the heck is that? But then I've also seen some of your images that you've shown some really strange structures, right? Things that don't appear to be like a creature per se, but are unusual structures. So can you spend a little bit of time describing some of these structures that you've seen?
Yeah, so I see it on the mic. So I had a bunch of stuff that was coming out off my skin. Okay. And so I thought it was just bad acne or whatever. Okay. I had picked one of my scabs one day and I'm like sitting there with it in my hand and it like felt it moving. I'm like looking at it. So I get in my like a eyepiece for a jeweler, and I'm looking down at it and I'm like, is that a dragon? Like, because it's standing on like these wings, right? So all of a sudden it just like swallows itself up and wraps the wings around it. And I'm like, is that why I'm not finding these in my bowel? So I go to the bathroom, whatever, and I see this thing all rolled up and I unroll it. And when I unrolled that thing and took the wings like and opened it up, it was what appeared to me looked like a just complete dragon. Okay. I was like freaking out. Oh my gosh, I found the first dragon. And I mean, I have pictures of it. Its eye was like the black part of the eye was like a diamond shape, like it goes down and up instead of across. Okay. And so the pupil of it was diagonally. And so it wasn't like a normal eye. Okay. So I started freaking out. It had like the face of a dragon, it had wings. So I'm thinking dragon, right? I had no clue that they could take into the silkworm and administer DNA of bat wings, pig head, and a rabbit's eye and create a live organism inside your body. And so when I Google it, I'm like, can a bacteria turn into, an actual animal in your body? They said, yes, it can with a vertebrate. It could be a vertebrate animal in your body. And so when I say these are parasites, a lot of it is more bacterial and fungi that they were able to, put into the silkworm and the fiber of the silkworm and actually administer that into our body. And it could be a protein that we eat, that could trigger it. If they like edited that gene to where that protein produces that, then if that certain protein produces that, that's what's going to happen in your body. Because I wanted to know if these are constantly being made by me or if I'm getting exposed to them. All right. Because I needed to know it in order to fix myself. So that was always a major concern of mine is if they actually triggered that gene to produce that protein, then is that why the creatures are showing up? But these were not just in my blood. These were coming out as whole creatures out of in bowel movements. So, and I don't know if anybody else was like going through their bowels and it sounds sick and it sounds crazy. It wasn't like I was touching it or nothing. I was rinsing it with the water with this, like a screen, like a strainer. And that's how I was finding them left behind after you rinse away all the bowel. And so I was able to collect those and have samples of them. So I have them like as proof because I didn't know if anybody would believe it or not. You know, I actually had to save these for that way. I have my documentation and my bases covered. So yeah, they were there. They were there. It was really live. Like I even have those stick ones that are like the fiber clots that they're pulling out of the blood. And when I see them, I see faces on them. I see the mouths. I even had one dry out in the air for 3 days, stuck it back in water, and it opens up its mouth. And I said, "Oh my gosh, if it could stay alive out of water for 3 days, then that's a red flag." I was like, "There's no way you're getting rid of these unless you dissolve them, because if they're that durable and viable, then that's pretty scary." So yeah, I was kind of flipping out some of the way through all that because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. I got dragons in my blood and nobody wants to listen to me and nobody wants to believe me. And yeah, so but they really weren't dragons, but I could see how I got fooled, you know, because I had no clue they could do that. And when Dr. Fauci was questioned at the board of the, you know, in front of the conference and stuff, they were saying, they even asked him, did China get a hold of our humanized mice? And when he said that, it was like a red flag went off on me because I remembered the chromosomes that came up as like, so a certain protein that I Google, okay? So when Dr. Artis was saying that they had COVID in the water, that there was a snake venom in the water, right? I
Right.
looked up two of the things on the patent, and this actually like confirms his statement. So there was ATCH, okay? That is a protein taken from a snake venom, all right? And that's what the venom is that protein. That was added into this patent. So I'm like, oh, pretty crazy that that's what he saw in the water. That's what's on this patent, and that's snake venom, and that's what's happening to some of our blood. That's in some of our blood, right? Then there was another one that was the coagulating factor IX. Okay, that is also another protein from a snake. All right, that was in this patent. So with those two things, I was able to say that he's right. That was like what I was seeing like in this silkworm, and that's what I'm seeing on the patent. And if that's what's in our water, as Dr. Artis is saying, then that would be very much evidence to back him up as being snake venom.
Well, I remember my previous guest, Dr. Henry Ely, was saying he heard about this venom hypothesis and he thought it was a little bit far-fetched, and he started looking into it with the intent of debunking it and found that all of this stuff was surprisingly true.
See?
And the more he started looking into it, he was like, wow, this is really going on. So for those who have dismissed that, saying, "Oh, that's ridiculous," look into it a little bit more. And apparently, there is this issue of, and I don't want to get it too into depth on this because I'm not qualified to do so, and I haven't really researched it enough, even in my own right. But there is this thing of venoms from different sources used in pharmaceutical products. So
Yeah.
there is this whole issue of, people being exposed to venoms in situations where maybe they were unaware of that.
And see,
So
yeah, you're right. You're right.
we
Sorry.
are, oh no, yeah, we're narrowing down towards the end of the show. We still have some time, but I just want to be mindful of the clock. And I would love for you to, if you can, you've made some really great progress from what I've heard in terms of some actual treatments. And that's like, the $1 million, I guess now by now you say the $1 billion question. $1 million used to be a big deal, now it's like the billionaires and the aspiring trillionaires. But the $1 billion question is, how can we help some of these folks, including yourself, who have experienced such terrible effects, but are still alive, thankfully,
Right.
after, these unnecessary interventions, quote unquote. I know that you worked with even our good mutual friend T Bird, who was a guest on this show recently, doing some cross referencing, some researching, some burning of the midnight lamp, as they say, staying late, and I'm looking into some of this stuff. So I know you have some concerns in terms of you don't want to just sort of divulge your formula because there's been so much effort to block effective treatments. And I know you're
Right.
conscious about trying to avoid getting caught in that snare. But what can you tell us with, all respect, of course, to your privacy and what you need to keep under wraps for the time being? What can you tell us in terms of these breakthroughs that I've heard you've made in terms of actual treatment or removal of the spike protein, if that's part of what's
Yeah.
going on. I don't know. Please explain.
Right. So when I went ahead and Googled the medicine that I put together, and it wasn't just me, it was another lady too. We went and put these medicines together, and when I Googled it with AI, it said that it actually stops the spike protein from penetrating the cell, the human cell. All right, which I have not, out of all the medicines I mixed together, been able to get an AI to say that back to me. Okay. So that was like, as soon as I seen that, I was like, that's it. Okay, that's what's going to help people, because now we won't get infected. Like whatever we do have, we won't keep getting infected, with any more. All right. So I was like, I don't know if it would stop the ones that we already had in our body, but it would stop the ones from coming into our body. All right. So that was huge. I also noticed that it said that it would stop the protein, right? That was associated with COVID, and it had like four different things that it was actually going to do against the COVID. And I can't express to you enough when I've added lots of medicines together, lots of herbs, everything, and I never got that response back from AI. So when I got that, I knew. I was like, that's it. So of course, I went ahead. I took it first, okay, because I wanted to make sure that it was going to be okay. When I took it, all the ones underneath my skin tissue just dried up. The ones under the skin tissue is actually called a serum. It's SICIRIN. I might not have spelled that right, but what that is it's when you go and get like a Botox injection, that's the same stuff in Botox. So it's like a liquid that can move underneath the skin. Okay, so that's the ones that are produced under in your tissue. Those things will eat your tissue. They will eat your bone. When they went away in my skin, when I had them dissolve, because it like dries them up. Whatever the medicine that I mixed together just dries them up. I noticed that my tissue was gone where they set, and the bone was gone. Half of like the bone of my ankle was gone, the ball. And they like to attack people's ball like down there, because my sister has the same thing now. Some of hers is missing. So she took it. My mom took it. I took it. A few other people's taken it, and all of us so far has been very successful. And when I put it in the blood, it eliminates all the ones out of the blood. So to me, and it doesn't just like chase them off the screen like some meds do. It actually just eats them down till they dissolve, like just like a thing attacking a cancer cell, and it just eats it up. So to me, that shows me that it's working. So and it does stay in the bloodstream for like 48 hours. So that's another good thing. So it's pretty active. It releases my white blood cells to where now they were out there being active in my red, and it's all on videos of that happening. So to me, that even if it was just releasing my white blood cells into my red, that's going to still like give me a better chance to stay alive a lot longer and fight whatever it is in my body. All right. I've gotten energy now. I could get out of bed. My back's not sore, So to me, those are all success things. And even if I can't say it's a cure, I could say it's going to let you live a better quality of life. All right. And that's important,
Big
because a lot
issue.
of us have been suffering.
Oh,
So
yes. I mean, that's something I've been thinking about a lot recently in terms of this notion of informed consent. And some people try to make the absurd claim that, oh, there was informed consent. No, there absolutely was not. Because if you talk to Tanya Kulain, if you talk to any number of the vaccine injured people that are our mutual friends who have had their entire health just taken from them, their mobility, their normal functioning. People were not under the impression that that was a possible outcome. I think
yeah,
the average person, I can't speak for everybody in the world, obviously, but I think the average person, when you say side effects, was thinking, oh, well, you might get sick for a couple of days and there's your
headache.
side effect,
Yeah.
or yeah, or you might, your arm might be sore for, a day or two, but they didn't say you could be completely ravaged by this.
Right. Right. And
And
die.
and that's another thing about the vaccine injured is, if you're a doctor who's discussing these matters, you told people to take these shots or whatever the case may be, however they're particularly situated in relation to the whole thing that we've experienced, it's like you should give pause to what's happened to these people.
Yeah.
It's
Research
just it's
it.
terrifying the way some of these people will just get right back to the poison pushing and say, "Oh, well, no medicine is perfect." Well, we're not talking about something not being perfect. We're talking about something, completely disabling somebody. And then you say, if that happened to one human being,
That's
it
one too
should
many.
be all, it's
Mhm.
one too many, and we should be aware of it. But
Right.
the fact that this type of severe outcome has happened to so many people, and there are still those who just are completely unaware of, yeah, people were definitely injured by these
What gets me is
injections.
they thought this was a virus for how long now? And now they're even starting to come out and say, "Oh, it's a bioweapon." And here's the other doctor that came out today and said that they confirmed that there is silkworm in the Pfizer shot. Okay, so when they said that today, I was like, "Yes, finally, somebody's got a confirmation on it." So, with that being said, that's pretty scary that this is something that's been put into us for how many years now, and that's the first record that's being brought out, and so that's kind of scary too. And all of them saying that there's animal DNA in the COVID or the Pfizer shot and stuff. And Jane, when she posted the picture of the Pfizer vaccine and what's in it, I saw the silkworm in that. The circles were in there, and I'm like, oh, funny, water, Pfizer shot in my blood, all the same. So it's been a journey for sure, and it's been hard to try to express people because when they say silkworm, they just think of a little worm crawling around inside you, and that's not really what it is. So it's been hard to explain it and describe it and voice it and get it out there and let people actually start looking at it as a possibility.
Well, it's really remarkable for everyone who's listening to. I hope everyone can appreciate that Dawn stumbled upon this, so to speak, through her own research and using a microscope, ordered a microscope, started using it, started learning about microscopy, training in microscopy effectively. And you came across this silkworm thing of like, hey, what is that? Is that a silkworm of some kind? But
Yeah.
then if you folks look into it, and all of you astute listeners, I know you guys are researchers and curious people, otherwise you probably wouldn't be listening to this program. But there's this whole crazy paper trail about the weaponizing of the silkworm. It's a
Yes.
crazy thing that it might sound absolutely insane right here, but look into it. There's like formal documentation about the weaponizing of the silkworm and how the silkworm as an organism allows for various processes that otherwise could not be carried out. It's astonishing.
Yeah.
So
Another one is the bird flu too. Yeah. Like normal
yeah,
things that would not enter our body will enter our body. So how they're getting ready to like kill a bunch of cows and chickens and all that other stuff. And when reality, that's how the bird flu is getting into the cow is through the silkworm. It could administer it into animals too, not just humans. So it's kind of crazy how they're, going to kill off our food supply line when there's ways to actually fix it. And I don't think that they're really putting it all together that it's the silkworm yet. So that's another thing that's pretty big out there right now. So yeah, it will let any virus get through us, any parasite, any disease, because it hides it until it gets into the nuclei, and then all of a sudden now it's reproducing it and it's just going crazy. And they produce 200 to 400 a day in your body. So that's massive. That's a lot. And they reproduce fast. So it's like that's I think one of the fastest things that they actually reproduce is so many. So it's kind of scary. It's really scary when you really look at it all.
very scary. Well, on that note, on that scary note, unfortunately, we're out of time.
Okay.
But Dawn Solomon, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that we can get the word out about some of your findings, and I hope we could get this microscopy conference
Right.
scheduled somehow because so many bizarre things have been documented, both in the vials of COVID shots and in people's blood, that we need to get to the bottom of this. We need some resources and some time spent clarifying what the heck has happened to people's blood and what the heck was in these shots in the first place.
And I
But
wanted
I
to
want
say
to
thank
thank
you
you.
too. Yeah, I want to say thank you too. And I wanted to let people know, like, if you're sick, I won't mind helping somebody. I just can't post it. I do have a patent on it already, so that's good. I am trying to find some people like would help like make mass quantities of it to like get it out to people so that a way we can start healing the nation because it's going to be like the whole nation to heal. So, and it's going to take a whole nation to get it out there and get it to heal too. So I'm down for like, and if anybody's got some suggestions to help out or, whatever, however we could get it going, but I just don't want to like post it or say it like over the
Totally
internet. So,
understood.
but
Considering
I
the
don't mind helping
information,
anybody. So,
yeah, considering the information war we find ourselves in, I don't fault you for that. It's
okay.
good to keep the cards close to your vest or whatever, however that poker
Right.
saying goes, on the
Trying,
chest
but at the
player.
same time, I don't want to like keep somebody sick neither, so I don't mind helping somebody neither.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. So that's
But I'm
great.
not a
And people,
doctor or anything like that neither, okay? So this is all
understood,
on my own.
understood.
So yeah.
And people can find you on Twitter at Dragon Slayer.
Yeah. Yeah. I know
Okay.
that goes with the dragons I thought I was finding.
Okay, yeah,
So
look for Dawn Solomon, which is at Dragon Slayer on Twitter. And thank you so much again, Dawn. Thank you,
thank
listeners, for
you.
tuning in. Please spread the word. We're trying to continue this conversation until these matters are resolved. This show is dedicated to medical freedom and freedom, period, actually. So thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a great weekend and talk to you soon.
When you walk with open arms towards the sun, you feel the warmth of the rays, and